I'll start by saying that on behalf of myself and the team, we hope you and your loved ones are safe. We will not be talking about Corona today. We'll be talking about the DoD's Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, or the CDMRPs. When we talk about the funding landscape, we do see that we are able to support all stages of R&D activities through non-dilutive sources of funding. And we tend to divide grants into three major groups. First one is early stage work, early stage preclinical, very little preliminary data, if any at all. Grants typically from $200,000 to $500,000. Second group, still preclinical or early stage clinical, when you already have some preliminary data to share, you've done the preliminary point of proof of concept. These grants typically start with $500,000 to about $3 million. And the third group is advanced clinical trials, big government contracts, when grants typically start with $3 million and the sky's the limit. And we do find the CDMRP program very present through all three of these groups. It is a very diverse program. We think that their scope is very wide, and we like working with them. And when we look at the CDMRP, we see it's basically involved as a mechanism for Congress to appropriate funds for research on specific diseases. It is organized in programs for specific indications. The focus areas can and do change every year. We see that they have an expedited review process divided into two, so you do not have to spend a lot of time preparing an application before you know that they do have some initial interest in it. And a very important feature here is that non-US entities are definitely eligible to submit as well. Not as just a slogan, they are very, very happy to award amazing science from all over the world. The mission of the CDMRP is to eradicate diseases and support the warfighter. And I know that when we think about DoD-related opportunities, we think about combat-related indications, but in reality, their scope is very wide. And they do support veterans and their family members as well. So when we'll look at the programs here, we'll see that we definitely see things that are beyond an Army's scope, and they do spread all around the life sciences. So when we look at the programs themselves, and when we try and submit a CDMRP grant, the review process is divided into a few stages. The first one is a pre-application, which is the first and definitely one of the most important elements of the entire process. It is typically limited to just a few pages, and most applications don't even make it past that stage. So it is definitely a crucial step. Make sure that you are taking the time to very carefully draft your pre-application and ensure the science is very well presented and represented, and does meet the guidelines and the specifications of the solicitation itself. After the pre-application is submitted, it is reviewed, and you are hopefully invited to submit the full application. After that stage, there is an additional review process, some pre-award discussions with the representative of the agencies, of course, and then hopefully the award. And everything that they do is done through a few award mechanisms. They do vary between the different programs and the different topics, both in terms of budget and of course the specifications. But we do see that there is a standard range, and I just wanted to show a few examples. So firstly, discovery or concept awards typically range from $100,000 to $200,000. Idea awards typically from $350,000 to about $600,000. Impact awards, roughly around $1 million. Technology or therapeutic development awards, typically $1 to $3 million. And clinical trial awards that are from $1 to $10 million. There are exceptions to that as well. And all of the applications themselves are presented in the CDMRP website. That is, that's the link below here. I will point out that in order to access the CDMRP website, you do need a US IP address. So either be in the US or make sure that you use a VPN. If you are not within the US and still want to look at the programs, you can also use the EBRAP system. This is the portal, the DoD's portal for online submissions, and all of the CDMRP applications are submitted through the EBRAP system as well. When you go into EBRAP, you just click Funding Opportunities and Forms. You can see the CDMRP tab, and you can see links to all of the programs that I will discuss here today. Just a heads up, I will not talk about each one of those, just to make sure that, you know, we're not spending 2 hours here. But I just wanted you to know that you can see everything through this link. They are very clear. You'll find a synopsis, a short summary of the highlights of the mechanism, and a longer solicitation that I definitely recommend reading before submitting. But everything is very straightforward. So just make sure that you access the most relevant program for you. And just to show you how wide their scope is, I'm going to use the list of topics from last year. So again, this is from 2019. And you can see all types of topics here. We see Alzheimer's disease, autism, kidney cancer, prostate cancer, MS, vision, tick-borne diseases, and the scope is definitely very wide. We don't have all the solicitations just yet. They are being announced literally daily. There is an additional program that was announced yesterday, and of course I added here. So this is what we have so far. These are the announcements. We have an ALS program, and these are, by the way, the pre-application deadlines. So the ALS program, the pre-application is due April 15th, definitely just around the corner. We have an autism program, April 28th, bone marrow failure, May 11th. We had a breast cancer program that unfortunately expired, but is definitely issued every year, so don't be alarmed. Lung cancer, that is due either May 6th or May 27th, depending on the specific mechanism that you're submitting through. Military burn, May 15th, ovarian cancer, April 30th, peer-reviewed medical, April 16th, so again, just around the corner, or April 23rd, peer-reviewed orthopedic, May 27th, peer-reviewed cancer, May 14th or July 30th, prostate cancer, July 4th, spinal cord injury, May 21st, and tick-borne disease, May 27th. So these are the ones that were announced. In addition to that, we also have the pre-announcements. As you can see, a lot of these topics were here last year as well. Some of them are new. We don't have the deadlines for them just yet, but I do recommend keeping a very close eye because, as I mentioned, the peer-reviewed cancer program was just launched yesterday. So during CDMRP season, I can tell you that we refresh both EBRAP and the CDMRP website daily because they do announce them, and you want to make sure that you're informed. So when we look at the entire list here, a specific program that I would like to use as an example here is the peer-reviewed medical program. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to go into each one of the topics, but this specific program is actually a long list of indications and topics. And I just want to show you what we have this year. So as you can see, really it's so diverse. They have arthritis, they have diabetes, food allergies, Fragile X syndrome, hepatitis B, nutrition optimization. Let's see what else is. I saw the plant-based vaccines earlier, and really all over. So this is definitely a list that we see that reflects the very rapidly changing needs of the US citizens, directly influenced by Congress, and it's great. They love orphan indications, and we do see that the list is a great way for them to really support different projects every year. And when we look at the specific award mechanisms for each one, for this specific programs, and as I mentioned, each one of the topics has different award mechanisms within. So we see that they have 4 award mechanisms this year. They have the Discovery Award, the Investigator-Initiated Research Award, Technology or Therapeutic Development Award, and Focused Program Award. And we'll very quickly go through all 4 of those. So Discovery Award, up to $200,000, basically supports the exploration of high innovation, new concepts, or untested theory. This is not a mechanism here to support work that was established before. Definitely high risk, high reward, early stage. That's what they want to see. The deadlines are pretty close to one another. So the pre-application is due April 16th and the full application April 30th. Unlike many of these programs here, the pre-application is not a part of the review process. You're submitting something called a letter of intent. So the DoD knows that you intend on submitting an application. And basically, you just need to hand in the letter of intent and continue working on the full application. Second mechanism is the Investigator-Initiated Research Award, up to $1.2 million, or $2 million if you are doing this project as a part of a collaboration. So they definitely encourage partnering PIs, not a must, of course. And through this mechanism, you cannot submit clinical trials. This is a preclinical work type of program. The deadline for the pre-application is April 23rd, and the full application is due August 20th. Third one is the Technology or Therapeutic Development Award, up to $4 million this year. It actually went up. Last year was up to $3 million. The scope is translation of promising preclinical findings into clinical applications. It is very product-oriented, and the product needs to be developed, maybe a tangible item such as drugs, biologics, devices, or knowledge-based products. The pre-application is due April 23rd as well, and the full application August 20th. The fourth mechanism that I would like to talk about is the Focused Program Award. The funding here is a bit higher, up to $7.2 million. But unlike the last mechanisms that I mentioned, here the focus is the collaborations between the parties taking part in the project. You need to include at least 4. And all 4 components needs to, of course, work together and advance the project, reach the goal together. You can have projects that range from early stage work to a small scale clinical trial. They are open to all kinds of programs, of course, but you do need to have a collaboration. So bear that in mind. And a few CDMRP submission tips. So firstly, of course, read the solicitation very carefully. It is not a short document, to say the least. I will point out that working on an application and then forgetting one of the administrative elements is heartbreaking. Make sure that you understand what they want to do. Make sure that you are able to provide them with everything that is needed. You have to pick the right topic and the right funding opportunity. They are very specific with what they want to see, which is great, of course. Make sure that you are giving them that. If you have a project that's amazing but is not within their scope, it is, of course, a waste of your time preparing the application. You have to remember that the pre-application is a very important and critical part of the process itself. It is sometimes said that working on a 2-page document is much harder than working on a 20-page document. And I definitely understand why, because every word counts here. every topic has its own set of rules, own set of regulations. So make sure that you are submitting something that is exactly what they need to see, and that you are able to make your science shine through the document. Also, make sure that the team is registered ahead of time. When you're submitting the pre-application, with some mechanisms, you can have an expedited registration process. Again, this is done through eBRAP. But when you're submitting the full application, you need to go through the full registration process. Make sure that you are budgeting in time to do that correctly. Our advice is to actually start with the registration progress, to make sure that if you do have problems, you have enough time to talk to the support team of the eBRAP system, of the CDMRP programs. They are great, they're happy to help, but you really don't want to do that 2 days before the submission, to make sure that that's not the thing that's holding you back. And of course, keep track of the key dates. Each one of these programs has a different deadline, of course, to make things even more confusing. And even within a specific topic, you'll see that each one of the mechanisms sometimes has its own deadline. So make sure that you are informed. And you know, in a way to be able to maximize your chances of being awarded, it is all about lowering the risk for them to support your application. I know that we're talking about government agencies here, but we think applicants should look at them as investors, and make sure that you are enabling them to pick you and support the work that you do. So firstly, of course, seek insight into the interests and goals of the funding agencies. That's a must here. But the application that you're submitting should correlate with your long-term R&D approach. If you find an application and you're awarded, but it just changes the focus of the company from where you want to go to what you are now obligated to do, that's definitely a problem. And another key element is, of course, to know your weaknesses and find partners if needed. There is a misconception that if a company has collaborations from outside, they might seem as weak or as unprofessional, but that's actually the opposite is true. Your team needs to be able to convince the CDMRP program officers that you are able to see this project through. If you're doing a kidney-related project, but you don't have a kidney expert, that is absolutely a problem. And I definitely recommend making sure that you have all of that covered before submission. Yeah, so that's it. Oh, sorry. There you go. Thank you so much for joining. That's it for today. There are a lot of webinars on our YouTube channel, and we also have a LinkedIn profile and a Twitter account that we try and make sure are updated. I'll take a few questions, but before I do, I just want to say that most of us are working from home now. This is a wonderful time to write grants. The CDMRP program is a great mechanism, and the best we can do during these times is to try and make the most of it. Okay, so now just a couple of questions maybe. Yes, absolutely. I'll send over the slides. Okay, can a small startup company apply to CDMRP? Or do you need an academic PI? So no, you can submit an application by yourself. There is no need for academia collaborations at all. I can tell you that many of the projects that we see do have academic collaborations, but that has more to do with the structure of the scientific team within the company and collaborations that were there previous to the submissions. Many of our clients submit grants by themselves. That is absolutely acceptable. No one expects you to have academia ties. Just make sure that you are presenting a scientific team that can complete the project. Okay, another important question, will they provide feedback after the pre-application review? So They do give you feedback. It is not very detailed, unfortunately. We do know that you can contact them and ask for a more detailed report or an explanation in terms of doing better next time. But in terms of the deliverables that you get after the pre-application, it's basically an invited or rejected response. Okay, so I think that is all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining again, and keep safe.